Hello, welcome to the channel. Subscribe, leave a like, and don't forget to write a comment. Enjoy watching.
They say your 30s are for healing from what your 20s didn't have the guts to confront. And in my case, that meant finally facing something I had spent most of my life laughing off with sarcastic jokes and "it's fine" texts. The kind of pain that creeps in quietly, like a slow leak in a ceiling you keep pretending won't cause any real damage. Every year on my birthday, like clockwork, my phone would buzz sometime around mid-afternoon. And I'd know it wasn't going to be a real celebration. Not because I didn't have friends or plans or even a little cupcake waiting for me on the kitchen counter, but because that message, the one from my mother, always came with the same hollow pit in my stomach. Oops, forgot again, love you, hope it's a good one. It was always some version of that, like a recurring punchline in a joke nobody but her thought was funny. Meanwhile, my brother Eric would get a delivery, a basket with artisan snacks, a plant with a handwritten card, sometimes even a damn balloon. And this wasn't new. This wasn't a one-time slip or a moment of forgetfulness that could be brushed off with grace. It had been happening since I was 16. Now here I am, 38, standing in front of my new apartment with the keys in one hand and my phone in the other, staring at the text she just sent. Oops, forgot again. You know how I get this time of year. Hugs. I didn't reply. I didn't send a thumbs up or a no worries. I didn't even roll my eyes. I just opened Instagram, scrolled to the photo I took earlier, me standing in front of my new place, in a red blazer I bought just for this moment, and typed out the caption that had been sitting in the back of my mind for weeks. Gifted it to myself. Posted. No tags, no location, no emojis. Just the photo, the key, and the truth that no one in my family had ever celebrated me the way I'd finally decided to celebrate myself. It's weird how people respond more to what you don't say. Within minutes, the likes started rolling in, and the comments followed. Friends, coworkers, even an old high school classmate I hadn't heard from in years. You deserve it. So proud of you. This is the energy we need. But the ones that mattered didn't show up. Not right away. Not until the silence got loud. I knew she'd see it. My mother followed me quietly, the way she always had, lurking but never engaging. She never liked a post, never commented, just watched from the shadows like she was studying a subject she didn't quite understand. I used to tell myself she was just old school, not into social media, not the kind of mom who knew how to connect with her daughter in public spaces. But after years of watching her flood Eric's timeline with doting comments and baby photos of his kids, and so proud of my boy captions, it became painfully obvious. She just didn't do it with me. So this year, I didn't wait around for her to remember. I didn't do the awkward phone call or the half-hearted, "It's okay, I know you're busy." I didn't send photos of my dinner or let her guilt me into a conversation I didn't want. I moved. I changed my zip code. I celebrated in silence. And I gave myself the gift she never bothered to wrap: recognition. Now here's the part where I stop and ask you something. Not just to pass the time or fill in the space between the story. I want to ask you this seriously. Have you ever realized, on some random Tuesday, that the people who should know you best have no clue what really matters to you? That the ones who raised you somehow missed the most obvious parts of your heart? And worse, that you've let them? I didn't cry when I posted the photo. I didn't feel triumphant or angry or even satisfied. I just felt done. Done with excuses. Done with the hope that this year would be different. Done pretending that a text with the word "oops" in it carried any affection at all. I remember sitting on the windowsill of my new place, eating Chinese takeout straight from the carton, watching the sunset crawl behind the buildings like it was giving me a slow clap. Not for being strong, not for being independent, but for finally stopping the damn performance. Because that's what it had been, hadn't it? Year after year of smiling through the letdown, laughing off the sadness, pretending I was above it all when really, all I'd ever wanted was a bouquet of damn flowers and someone to say, "Hey, you matter." Eric's birthday was 2 weeks ago. He got a basket with maple fudge, artisanal coffee, and a succulent. There was a post on Mom's Facebook with baby pictures of him in cowboy boots, a caption that read, "Can't believe my baby's 41 today." 41. And still the golden child. He didn't even comment, just liked it. Probably didn't even call her, and yet, he still got the spotlight. Meanwhile, I was sitting in a moving truck, lifting boxes on my birthday, wondering if anyone would even notice I was gone. But I wasn't bitter, not this time. This time, I was clear. The next morning, I woke up to a notification, one I didn't expect, a private message from Mom. Just 2 sentences. "Nice apartment, wish you told us. Are you okay?" And that was the beginning of the unraveling. There's a kind of fatigue that doesn't come from running or working too hard or sleeping too little. It's the kind that settles in your bones when you've spent your entire life trying to earn something that should have been freely given. When you've sat at family dinners and watched love be portioned out like dessert, with someone else always getting the bigger slice, and everyone acting like that's just how it is. My brother Eric was never a villain in the way movies or books make them. He wasn't cruel, he didn't bully me, and he didn't slam doors or call me names growing up. If anything, he was oblivious, like a golden retriever in a crown, trotting through life on a path laid with soft grass, while mine felt like it had more gravel than ground. He was 3 years older, charismatic, good-looking in that suburban dad way, even before he had kids. And for reasons I still don't fully understand, our mother treated him like the sun rose just to light his path. From the time we were little, it was clear who the center of her universe was. When Eric got a C- in algebra, she baked cookies and said he was trying his best. When I got an A- in history, she asked why it wasn't a full A and if I needed to study harder. At Eric's soccer games, she screamed from the sidelines like her life depended on it, waving signs and snapping photos. At my piano recitals, she sat politely and clapped like she was at a school board meeting, looking at her watch halfway through the second piece. It wasn't always loud, the favoritism. It was in the small things, the tone, the attention, the weight of her eyes when she looked at him like she saw possibility, and looked at me like she saw obligation. And at the time, I didn't have the language to name it. I thought maybe I was imagining things, that I was sensitive or selfish or just jealous. It wasn't until years later, in therapy, when a woman with a soft voice and too many framed diplomas said, "Jenna, I think you've been emotionally neglected," that the truth finally snapped into focus like a lens clearing. My dad used to be the balance in the house, the one who noticed when things were off, the one who took me out for ice cream after Mom missed a school performance or forgot to pick me up on time. He wasn't loud about it, but he saw me. I remember once, when I was 11, I came home from school with a project I had won first place on, a diorama about the solar system, and Mom barely looked up from the phone call she was on. She nodded, said cool, and went back to discussing church plans. I left the box on the counter, face down. That night, Dad stayed up late with me in the garage, helping me fix a light in the box so the planets would glow. He didn't say much, but before I went to bed, he tapped the side of my head and said, "You've got a whole galaxy up there. Don't let anyone act like it's less than that." When he died, everything tipped. It's like the family compass broke, and suddenly we were all just spinning in different directions. I was 23, barely out of college, trying to figure out how to survive in a job I hated with roommates I couldn't stand, while Eric was settling into a new house with his wife and a baby on the way. After the funeral, Mom all but moved into his guest room for 2 weeks, helping with the baby, organizing his kitchen, making sure he ate. Meanwhile, she forgot I even existed for about 6 days. No call, no text, no check-in to see if I'd made it back to my apartment. I remember standing in my closet the night after the service, staring at the black dress I wore, still hanging up, and thinking, so this is how it's gonna be now. People always talk about grief like it's this all-consuming tidal wave, but they don't tell you about the way it exposes everything that was already cracked. My relationship with my mother didn't fall apart after Dad died. It simply shed its disguise. Without him there to pretend we were all okay, the truth showed itself in plain daylight. I was never going to be Eric. I was never going to be the one she posted about, bragged about, or called first. I was the one she remembered last, if she remembered at all. It's funny, in a sad kind of way, how you start building your own armor when you grow up with that kind of love. You learn to stop expecting too much. You celebrate your own wins quietly. You downplay your pain because you know it won't be met with comfort. And you laugh when things hurt because you've trained yourself to believe that vulnerability is just another way to be disappointed. That armor becomes your skin. And before long, even the people closest to you think you don't need anyone. That's the biggest lie of all, that we're strong because we have to be. So when I got that message from her, "Nice apartment, wish you told us, are you okay?" I felt nothing, not anger, not relief, not even surprise. It was the same emotional flatline I'd become so familiar with. I stared at the screen for maybe 2 minutes, then locked my phone and walked back inside. There was nothing left to say. She didn't ask when my lease started. She didn't ask why I moved or how I was feeling, just that vague, cold sentence. "Are you okay?" What does that even mean coming from someone who's never really asked? The next morning, I got a knock on my door. Not a package, a person. When I opened it, I wasn't expecting who I saw. Eric, standing there with 2 coffees, like we were about to have a casual catch-up, as if I hadn't just thrown a digital grenade into the middle of our family's illusion of closeness. "Hey," he said, a little out of breath. "Mom's kind of freaking out. What's going on?" And I just stood there staring at him, holding my breath, wondering how many years of silence I could unspool in a single conversation, or if I even wanted to. There's a strange kind of humiliation that comes not from being hurt outright, but from being so completely overlooked that even your pain feels like a private, insignificant detail, not worth anyone's time or concern. And I remember the exact moment I understood what that felt like, because it happened on the night of my 30th birthday, a milestone that was supposed to mark the beginning of a new era, a turning point where everything finally starts to make sense. Or at least that's what everyone tells you in their overly cheerful birthday cards and Pinterest quotes. I had just come home from work, which had already been a slow crawl of a day. One of those dragged-out Tuesdays, where your coworkers remember just enough to say something polite in the break room, but not enough to do anything meaningful. My desk had a single balloon tied to the handle of my drawer. Left by Lisa from HR. Sweet girl, but we barely knew each other. And I spent the lunch hour eating cold pasta in my car because I couldn't stand the idea of pretending to be excited about an overpriced group lunch where people only half listen while scrolling their phones. By the time I got back to my apartment, the sun was already dipping low, and I was hoping for at least a voicemail. Maybe from Mom, maybe even from Eric, something that sounded like they remembered I existed. Instead, my phone was quiet, and I told myself not to care, that I was an adult, that birthdays were for kids and people who needed validation, and that I didn't fall into either category anymore. But then, at 8:42 in the evening, the screen lit up with a name I knew too well, and with the kind of hope that only comes from years of disappointment, I opened the text without letting myself brace for it. "Oh no, just realized today's the big 3-0. Sorry, sweetie. Time got away from me. Hope you're doing something fun. Love you." That was it. No call, no card, no flowers, no gift. Just a digital pat on the head from the woman who gave birth to me, sent nearly 9 hours too late, as if remembering it all was some kind of prize I should be grateful for. And the thing that really broke me wasn't the text itself. It was the fact that I'd expected it, that I had already guessed exactly when it would come and what it would say, because this wasn't the first year, and it wouldn't be the last. But 30 stung in a different way, like some final confirmation that I wasn't going to grow out of this dynamic or magically earn her affection just by getting older or becoming more successful or buying my own damn cake. I remember standing in the bathroom with the light off, just the hallway glow slipping in through the door, staring at myself in the mirror with that hollowed-out look you get when your body is upright, but your spirit has already sunk to the floor. The mascara I hadn't bothered to take off was smudged in the corners of my eyes, and my hair looked like I'd been caught in a wind tunnel of disappointment. And I cried. Not the delicate kind of tears you see in movies where one drop slides down a cheek and it's all poetic. I mean full-body sobbing, with my hand clamped over my mouth so my neighbors wouldn't hear. Sliding down the cabinet door until I was curled up on the floor next to the cold tile, shaking from the weight of how invisible I felt. I stayed there for almost an hour, not because I wanted to wallow, but because I didn't know where else to go. There's a weird kind of safety in the bathroom, like the echo of your own breath against tile makes you feel less alone, even if it's just an illusion. I eventually peeled myself up, washed my face with ice-cold water, poured a glass of wine, and posted a photo of the cake I'd bought for myself, pretending it had been gifted by a friend who actually had to cancel last minute. That's the level I was functioning on. Not just alone, but lying about being loved so I didn't have to face what I already knew. And here's the messed up part. I forgave her. I forgave her again and again. Every single year after that, I made up reasons why she forgot. Maybe she was stressed. Maybe she was distracted. Maybe birthdays just weren't her thing. But the truth was simpler and harder to admit. She just didn't see me the way she saw him. Eric, her golden boy, her charming family man son who could do no wrong, the one she posted about on Facebook with baby pictures and long captions, the one whose children had more of her attention than I'd had in the last decade combined. That night became a reference point, a landmark in my emotional history. From then on, I promised myself something would change. I didn't go no contact. I didn't write a dramatic letter or start a screaming match, because that's never been my style. I decided I'd start doing something quieter, something more dangerous to people who rely on your silence. I started keeping score, not out of spite, not to hurt her, but to remind myself that what I felt was real, that I wasn't crazy or overly sensitive or needy. I wrote down every forgotten call, every missed event, every time she remembered to celebrate Eric and forgot to ask me how I was doing. I kept it in a journal I never showed anyone, just one sentence per line, each one a paper cut. And by the time I was 38, that journal was nearly full. So when Eric showed up at my door, holding 2 coffees like we were about to have some sibling moment of connection, I didn't see my brother. I saw the last 8 years of silence, of fake smiles and missed birthdays, of being the sister who clapped for his victories while my own went unnoticed. And he had the audacity to say, "Mom's kind of freaking out. What's going on?" Like I'd started some fire in the living room and now needed to explain why the drapes were burning. I didn't let him in right away. I just looked at him long and hard and tried to remember the last time we'd had a conversation that wasn't about him, about his job, his kids, his vacations. And when I couldn't think of one, I stepped aside and let him in. Not because I wanted to talk, but because I was finally ready to say what I should have said 8 birthdays ago. Eric stood in the middle of my new living room, like a man who had wandered into a museum, dedicated to things he'd never thought to notice. His eyes scanning the exposed brick wall I had fallen in love with the minute I toured the place. The plant stand I built with my own hands over a weekend last spring. The framed black and white photo of Dad that leaned casually against the bookshelf I had stained myself. And it was almost comical, watching him take it all in like he was seeing me for the first time. As if my life had finally earned the status of real, now that it was reflected in hardwood floors and a balcony with a view. He didn't say anything for a full 30 seconds, which in our family was long enough to feel like a confession. Then awkwardly, he held out one of the coffees, lukewarm probably, but still smelling like an olive branch, and said, "Thought maybe we could talk." I didn't reach for it. I didn't move at all, really. I just looked at the coffee, then back at him, then walked toward the kitchen where I had already made my own cup that morning, black with 2 sugars, the way I like it, the way no one else in my family ever remembered. Despite the fact that I had been drinking it that way since college, he followed, like a puppy not entirely sure what it did wrong, waiting for some sign of whether he was in trouble or just an unfamiliar territory. And for a moment, I let him sit in that discomfort. I wanted him to feel what I'd felt every birthday, every family holiday where he got a speech and I got a seat at the far end of the table, every phone call where I asked how he was and he never once returned the question. "I saw your post," he said finally, fiddling with the coffee cup like he was hoping it would give him the right words. "Mom saw it too. She's confused." "Of course she is," I replied, more tired than angry, more resigned than bitter. "She's never really paid attention." He winced, the way people do when the truth hits too close to home. And for a second, I almost felt bad. Almost. But that feeling passed quickly because this wasn't about making him uncomfortable. This was about telling the story I had swallowed for far too long. I turned and looked him straight in the eye, and I let the words come, not in a scream or an explosion, but in the clear, even tone of someone who has rehearsed this conversation 100 times in her head, while folding laundry or driving home from work, or staring at the ceiling at 3 a.m. "Do you know what she sent me this year?" I asked, not expecting him to answer. "A text at nearly 9 p.m. Oops, forgot again. That's what I get, Eric. That's what I always get. Meanwhile, you get baskets and flowers and Facebook albums with childhood photos and captions about how proud she is. You get called. You get remembered. And I get a sentence." He opened his mouth, probably to defend her, but I held up my hand, not angrily, just firmly, and kept going. "I'm not asking you to feel guilty. I'm not even asking for an apology. I'm telling you this because I'm done pretending it doesn't matter. I'm done pretending I'm not hurt. I've spent my entire life being the one who understands, the one who makes excuses for her, for you, for everyone. And I'm tired, Eric. I'm tired of clapping for your birthdays and your kids and your mortgage, while I get ignored like an afterthought." He looked stunned, not because it wasn't true, but because it was. And he had never thought about it, never been made to see it. That's the problem with being the favorite. You don't have to notice the imbalance. You just assume everyone gets what you get. That love is evenly spread. That silence doesn't mean something deeper. But I knew better. I had lived the silence. I had memorized it. "I don't know what to say," he said quietly. And for the first time in a long time, I believed him. Not because he was sorry. I wasn't even sure if he was. But because I think, maybe for the first time, he saw me standing there not just as his little sister who always had it together, but as a full person, bruised and exhausted from carrying the weight of being unseen. "You don't have to say anything," I said. "Just don't act like I lit a match. The house was already on fire. I just stopped pretending it wasn't burning." He nodded, and we sat in silence for a while. The kind of silence that isn't comfortable but necessary. Like the air after a storm when things are still wet and broken. But at least the noise has stopped. I could tell he wanted to fix it, not for me, but to put the world back into the shape he recognized. But that shape didn't exist anymore, at least not for me. As he got up to leave, he hesitated at the door, then turned back and said, "Mom doesn't mean to hurt you. She just, I don't know, she's not great with—" "Don't," I cut in. "Don't explain her to me. I know who she is. I've spent 38 years trying to earn love from someone who decided I wasn't worth celebrating. And this year, I stopped trying." He nodded again, but slower this time, like he finally understood that this wasn't a tantrum or a cry for attention. It was a declaration. After he left, I sat on the couch for a long time, watching the light shift across the room, and I let the quiet settle over me like a heavy blanket. Then my phone buzzed, a voice message. It was from my mother. I didn't open it right away. I stared at the notification for a solid minute, my thumb hovering just above the screen, heart tight with the kind of apprehension you feel when you know. The truth is about to come out, not in some grand confession, but in a few clipped sentences that will either confirm what you've always feared or offer the tiniest flicker of hope that maybe, just maybe, there's something more beneath the silence. Eventually, I hit play. Her voice came through, shaky but familiar, like an old cassette tape played too many times. She didn't start with a greeting. She just launched right in. I saw your post. I didn't know you were moving. I guess you've been busy. I just wanted to say I hope you're happy. I know I'm not always the best at remembering things, but you've always seemed strong, stronger than me. I hope this place makes you feel seen. I'm not great with words, but you know I love you, right? I hope you know that. And then silence. No apology, no real acknowledgement. Just the same vague, clumsy phrases she always used when she felt cornered. You know I love you. As if that should be enough. I sat there for a while, letting the weight of those words settle, and for the first time in my life, I didn't scramble to make her feel better. I didn't rush to respond or soften the blow. I didn't say, it's okay, because it wasn't. Instead, I let the message play again, and I listened. Not for what was said, but for what was missing. And it was in that silence, cold, brittle, and unmistakable, that I realized she'd never say the one thing I'd waited my entire life to hear. I'm sorry. And I finally stopped waiting. The morning after I listened to that voice message, the one that was meant to sound like concern but landed with the emotional temperature of an automated reminder from a bank, I stood at the edge of my new living room, barefoot on the cool wood floor, with the kind of clarity that doesn't come from some dramatic revelation, but from the slow, undeniable realization that there's nothing left to salvage, at least not in the form you'd always imagined it. The sunlight had crept in through the half-open blinds, scattering across the floor in dusty stripes, and for a moment, I just stood there, watching it move, wondering how something as simple as light could feel like validation. Like a quiet hand on the shoulder saying, "See, you made it out." I had no plans that day. No parties, no phone calls to schedule, no guests to expect. Just the silence of a home that finally felt like it belonged to me, not because it was expensive or trendy or big, but because it had been earned, every inch of it, through 1,000 small moments of swallowing disappointment, biting my tongue, and working twice as hard to feel half as noticed. I walked into the kitchen, poured myself a second cup of coffee, and opened my old laptop, the one with the cracked corner and the "Don't talk to me before coffee" sticker that had started peeling. And without much thought, I clicked through a folder I hadn't opened in years. It was labeled Dad's Voicemails. After he passed, I'd saved every recording I could find, every birthday message, every just checking in call, even the accidental butt dials with muffled background noise and static. Most of them I had heard already, played and replayed like songs that meant too much to delete. But one caught my eye, not because I didn't remember it, but because I remembered it too well. It had been left on my 29th birthday, a year before everything started to fall apart in ways I didn't fully recognize at the time. I hit play. Hey there, my little star. I know you're probably out doing something fabulous, but I wanted to say happy birthday before I forgot. You've always been the strong one, Jenna. Even when you were little, I could see it. You didn't cry when you scraped your knee. You just wiped it on your jeans and kept climbing the damn tree. Don't let that strength make you feel small. It's not a burden. It's a light. Let it shine, even when the people around you don't notice it. I see it. I always have. It wasn't long or dramatic, just the kind of message that sticks in your chest because it feels like it's reaching across time to wrap around your ribs and remind you that once, someone saw you, really saw you, not as an extension of someone else, not as a backup plan, not as the emotional sponge in a family that refused to deal with its own mess, but as a person who mattered. I let the message play again, slower this time. And then I sat back, closed the laptop, and stared out the window, not because I was thinking about what he'd said, but because I was finally understanding the difference between being remembered and being seen. My mother remembered my birthday, eventually, but my father saw me, even when there was nothing to celebrate. That day, I didn't post anything else. No follow-up photos, no dramatic captions, just silence. And in that silence, I started unpacking boxes, stacking plates in the cabinets, arranging books in color order like I always do when I need to feel in control of something. I opened the windows, let in the early spring breeze, and played music from the little Bluetooth speaker I'd gotten on sale last Christmas, not for ambiance, but for the noise, for the beat that drowned out the memory of birthdays spent waiting for a knock on the door that never came. Around noon, I made myself a birthday lunch. Nothing fancy, just a grilled cheese with tomato soup and a glass of white wine. And I sat on the floor, legs crossed, eating like I was back in college. Except this time there was no one to explain myself to, no roommates, no mother, no expectation to do something big. I was the big thing. This apartment, this meal, this silence was the celebration, and it didn't need validation. Later that evening, after the sun had dipped below the skyline and the city had begun to quiet, I lit a single candle I found at the bottom of one of the moving boxes, lavender and something else, maybe cedar, and I walked to the center of the room with my phone in hand. I opened Instagram again. This time, I didn't post a selfie or a quote. I took a picture of the empty space. No couch yet, no rug, just clean lines and bare walls. And I captioned it. Finally got a space where I can breathe. That post didn't get as many likes as the first one. Fewer comments. Some friends messaged privately asking if I was okay. I told them I was more than okay. I was free. Not from my family. They were still there, somewhere, with their tangled expectations and misfired affections, but from the version of myself that kept shrinking to fit into a mold someone else had made. I was done asking to be included. Done waiting for recognition that never came. Done accepting scraps of love packaged as just the way she is. And the truth is, I didn't need my mother's apology anymore. I had built a life where her words, or lack of them, didn't determine my worth. A few days later, she texted again, just 3 words. Hope you're happy. And this time, I didn't leave it on read. I didn't reply either. I just let it sit there, blinking on my screen, like a leftover voicemail from a number you don't need anymore. Because maybe I was finally learning that not all silence is a wound. Some silence is a choice, a boundary, a line drawn not out of anger, but out of self-respect. And as I lay on the floor that night, staring at the ceiling of a home I'd bought with my own hands, on a birthday she forgot again, I realized something I wish I'd known years earlier. You don't need permission to love yourself loud and full and without apology. You don't need their flowers. You don't need their damn baskets. You just need to know, deeply, fiercely, undeniably, that you were always worth celebrating, even if you had to do it alone.